And then I heard this voice, that same voice. Don't be afraid. Well, I wasn't afraid this time. This is exactly where you are supposed to be. I remember waking up from that surgery saying, whoa, I felt so good. The fear of cancer is gone. Everything was great. I was laying in my bed. All I heard were her screams and my screams in the color red. All of the blankets that I had over me were blood red. I remember screaming. I remember her screaming. And then all of a sudden, oh, this is interesting. I'm up in the top of the room. That's my body down there. That's Dr. Jim and all the nurses trying to work. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is wonderful. My body, through no effort of my own, gently lifted up and went up through that aperture. And there I am. I started to feel myself propelling forward through space. I saw stars. I saw stars. People need to hear assurances that there is something beyond life, that God is real. And the best way to do that is what you're doing. Talk to people that have been there and come back. So let me give you some background information, and then I'll tell you this incredible life that I've been blessed with. Once upon a time, there was a little girl named Sandy Duell. My name is Duell. And my family lived in upstate New York, the Adirondack Mountains, Lake George. Now, we were surrounded by American history, Fort William Henry, Fort Ticonderoga, Saratoga. It was a part of our lives. I was middle-class family. My dad had a very successful garage business. He could fix anything that ran. He had a wonderful mechanic ability. I wanted to learn how to fix cars, but back then girls weren't allowed to. So I'm mechanical, but I wasn't allowed to work in the garage. Well, anyway, I had three brothers. Now, we had a happy childhood. We did fun. We lived in the country, so we could go out into the woods, and we built tree forts. We got pollywogs out of the stream. Did all kinds of fun things. And because we had many cousins, we went to my grandfather's farm on Sunday afternoons, and we would all get together and could run the fields. We could play Tarzan in the hay barn. We could look at the kittens, play with the cows. Have you ever, people never probably have done this, but we went down a steep snowbank on a car hood like a toboggan, like 6 kids. That is really fast. We had a horse draw it back up the hill again, but we had so much fun. Well, my family had strong faith. My mom sent us to the Baptist church on a Sunday school bus every Sunday morning, my 3 brothers and I. I accepted Christ in Irv Chambers' concert. Now, people my age, 80, are going to realize the name Irv Chambers, but he did beautiful programs. And that's when I first discovered who Jesus was in my life. And then I was involved in my first marriage life with a Methodist church. I was a Sunday school teacher, did all those things. I ended up becoming a Presbyterian women's leader. And now my husband, Bob, and I go to St. Elizabeth's Episcopal Church. We love Bible study. I need to understand the Bible. I'm not a Bible expert by any stretch of the imagination. Well, when I was 7, my life changed dramatically. I was having trouble breathing. My parents sent me to the Glens Falls Hospital emergency room. I remember being placed on a gurney. I remember being pushed down the hall so fast that the lights went whoosh, 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 whoosh. They were running down the hall with me, trying to get me to the elevator to get up to the operating room. Well, then all of a sudden, the gurney stopped, and a doctor laid on top of my chest and opened up my throat. He cut my throat open, called a tracheotomy. Turned out my diaphragm was paralyzed, so I was no longer breathing. I would have been dead by the 3rd floor. I never would have made it to surgery. So that saved my life. That gave me at least some air for a while. Now, that turned out to be polio. Polio is a disease that is coming back. It was my first near-death experience, and it certainly influenced my life tremendously. Everybody hopes to go to heaven. Nobody wants to die, right? But some do die and come back, and as you know, that's what I am. I'm a near-death experiencer. Hundreds of NDEs will tell you they got to heaven but got sent back. I got to stay, and I could have stayed. So mine's a little bit different. but we'll just go on with the rest of the details because they're all still very similar. Well, it's fascinating what happens when we die. And NDEs are more than just stories. They give you insight of what they saw, insight what they learned. Some of us come back with messages. I'm a messenger of that type of thing. And sometimes it brings back tremendous peace, either for us or for the people that are hearing our words. So I was doubly blessed. I was allowed the privilege of going to heaven twice, not once. Now, I'd like to tell you about the one I remember the most. It was very colorful. And the word colorful is very true. Okay, in 1978, I was in my early 30s. I'd had my 3 children, but I was having uterine problems, a biopsy after bad biopsy, and cancer, and dealing with all these things. I was a very young woman. But my gynecologist said, Sandra, you really have to have surgery. It grew from the size of a walnut to the size of a melon in 3 weeks' time. There was no choice. So when they did the surgery, they opened up my tummy, the whole length of my tummy. Well, I remember waking up from that surgery saying, whoa, I felt so good. The fear of cancer is gone. Everything was great. I was laying in my bed, talking to my roommate. I thought, oh, I feel like I finally can live and enjoy my life again, right? Well, I remember a nurse coming in and saying, don't you want to get out of bed? Well, yeah, can I get out of bed? Can I do it? I want to. So she said, yes, so come along with me, she said. And I remember I'm a very tall woman. I'm 6 foot tall, so I'm a lot taller than a lot of people. I remember this nurse got in the back of my shoulders and pulled my shoulders back saying, Sandra, because I was home, I wasn't walking, I was waddling because my belly really hurt. And I remember she pulled my shoulders back. Oh my gosh, the searing pain. Well, somehow I got back to my room. I remember crawling in my bed going, oh, I'm back in bed. Good. That was not fun. That was not a good time. And I remember falling asleep. Now, I remember waking up and I felt wet. I thought, have I wet the bed? Oh my gosh, I'm an adult person. Have I? Oh, this is going to be embarrassing if I wet. Oh, this is not good. Well, back then the IV boards were rigid, so I couldn't get to my right call button over there. So I said to my roommate, please call the nurse. I think I wet myself. Oh gosh, I'm embarrassed. I thought, oh no, here we go. Well, when she called the nurse and I opened my eyes, all I heard were her screams and my screams in the color red. All of the blankets that I had over me were blood red. I was bleeding out into my blankets. And that's a lot of blood there. To imagine the blankets, like 3 layers of blankets. And I remember screaming. I remember her screaming. I remember people dashing about. And then all of a sudden, oh, this is interesting. I'm up in the top of the room, turned over, because I went up this way from my bottom up. My head was facing up. I looked down. Oh, that's interesting. That's my body down there. That's Dr. Jim and all the nurses trying to work. That's interesting. I kind of thought this is free floating. It really felt nice. It felt very good. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is wonderful. And oh well, it's interesting. And all of a sudden, and I know intellectually that hospital rooms have ceilings, but this is what happened to me. As I turned my head, I saw an aperture, and in that aperture were clouds. My body, through no effort of my own, gently lifted up and went up through that aperture, and there I am. Oh my gosh, there's Glens Falls Hospital. There's a Hudson. There's my house down there. This is fascinating. It's like, says in the level, like, oh my goodness, I can see houses and I can see Crandall Park. So, whoa, this is, wow, I like this. And all of a sudden, whoop, I was up here and the clouds where big jets are. I go, oh, well, I guess you don't sit on a cloud. Okay, this is kind of interesting. And then all of a sudden, I started to feel myself propelling forward through space. Some other NDs will tell you they saw a white tunnel, a black tunnel, a white void, a black void. I saw stars. I saw stars. I was flying through stars. Yes, stars. So how do I describe this for you? There's a television show called Star Trek, and it's where they would talk about space travel, and they had the Starship Enterprise. My stroke is acting up a little with my words, Starship Enterprise. And they would talk about it going into warp speed. Well, all of a sudden, whoa, I am going through planets. I am going through space. Whoa, zip, 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 zip. After a while, and I don't know how long I was flying, I started to slow down. And I could see more clearly the stars. And they were beautiful. Again, more slowly. And in the distance, I saw a horizon. I was really slowing down. I'm getting closer to a planet. And look at that. That's as close a picture as I can find to what I saw. Now, we always wonder who we're going to see in heaven. Well, I remember looking at the walls, and heaven had beautiful spires too. I could see this big wall around them. And as I was coming down closer, I could see somebody or something standing outside the entranceway. It was not like a gate, like an archway. And there's this person signaling to me. I thought, I must have had some shape because I remember landing in the grass, landing in the garden. And we often wonder, who's it going to be? I thought, well, maybe my deceased ex-husband, maybe my young brother. No, it was my grandfather. Now, at the time, it seemed strange. It was my grandfather. After I think about it, it's exactly perfect. Exactly perfect. My grandfather had died unexpectedly when I was an early teen. And he'd had a circulatory problem in his legs. They amputated one leg. And he was told, you can have the next leg taken off tomorrow. Well, Grandpa said, my grandfather's a very proud man. No, no, no. He's gone. He died. Boom, he's gone. Well, I never had a chance to say goodbye to him. I never had a chance to tell him how much I loved him. I had many grandchildren, but he was always special with me. He talked to me like what I had to say was important to him. He shared his Whitman's chocolates with me. He shared his horses with me, and nobody else got to, take. And I thought, oh my gosh, now I can tell Grandpa, thank you. So I just grabbed him. He had form, he had shape. It was his smell, it was his feeling, it was his hair, his eyes. He was younger. He had two legs, and he was healthy, and he was whole. But that was my grandfather, Jim Duell, no question. He said, Sandy, come on in. So he started to walk me into this first garden. It's hard. I'm going to do a quote. Someone said, heaven cannot be described in earthly terms. You've probably heard this. It is far easier to explain a rainbow to a person who's been blind since birth. You must experience it. Well, absolutely true, but I'm going to do the best I can with my vocabulary. Everything seemed to be pulsing, glistening. The trees, the leaves, the grass, the flowers. Like, ooh, it was just energy, energy. Flowers of every color and every fragrance, but yet they melded together. You would think that too much of a fragrance, but no, it was beautiful. And the flowers, we don't have colors in our world like these. And to touch them, I was able to touch them, and they were like, they're full of energy. They were just wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. So, well, come on, Sandy, we have to go a little bit further along. So I was still trying to touch everything, and he's, come on, Sandy, we need to go along. Well, he went into another garden, and okay, he said, okay, we need to go into this room now. And he took me up to a building that had an open door, a big, big, beautiful building, big open door. Oh, he said, here's Sandy. I can't go in with you. You have to go in alone. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. I didn't want to go in there. I didn't know what was in there. I saw this big opening. I saw light. I was happy to be in heaven, but Grandpa, don't leave me. I don't, no, 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 no. He kind of shoved me in. I remember getting put into that room, like, oh. And then I heard this voice, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. Yeah, well, I was afraid, very, very afraid. And then the voice softened and said, Sandra, come up here. What I saw was what I thought God allowed me to see. Because if the creature, the entity that has created the earth, the universe, everything, every little critter, every person is beyond our imagination. So he put himself into an entity that was energy, but talking to me, and I was not afraid of him. Once I heard that voice again, Sandra, do not be afraid, come up here. I walked up, and when you're a child, sometimes you're called into the principal's office, not too often, but sometimes, and you're kind of standing in front of a person of authority. I go, what have I done? And he was looking at me with such intensity. Oh my gosh, he's looking through my soul. He's looking through my eyes. He knows everything about me. Oh my gosh, what am I going to do? Well, right now, I'm going to stop intentionally. Before I go any further, I want to tell you about the beginning and the polio connection. So I'm going to remember that. I'll bring you back in just a minute. I need to tell you how these two NDEs come together. So 1952, I was telling you about the polio, and there were 18,000 people died that year. There are two types of polio. One is called spinal bulbar, which affects the brain, and then there was a paralysis type. I was lucky, I guess, in some way. I had the spinal bulbar. My mother knew I was going to live or die, but anyway. Um, as I said, I wasn't feeling well. My mother took me to the hospital. I told you about how the doctor did the trach, and they got me up into an iron lung. Now, iron lungs are not something people see very often, but I'll tell you, I never want to see another one. This is what they look like. It's like a big submarine. They slide your body in. There's a very firm membrane around your throat, because what this is truly an external breathing lung. What these machines down here is, it puts air pressure into the machine so that your chest will go down. It releases the pressure, your chest goes up and it goes down. Plus, I had the trach so they could keep my throat clear. I was in that horrible thing on a Sunday. Now, on Wednesday, there were 10 of us there. Now, that's unusual. Glens Falls is a very small town in upstate New York. There are 10 kids in Glens Falls Hospital, all struggling to save their lives, 10 little kids. And back then, they really weren't quite sure how we got it. I don't know how I got it either, but anyway, I remember feeling trapped and not knowing what was going on because just a little girl. Well, on Friday, there was only one child left alive. Me. Sandy was still alive. Well, my mother got a call from Dr. Friedman. Mrs. Doyle, you need to come up. We're losing Sandy. Now, I never really knew the story. My mother would never talk about it. But just before she passed in 2006, I said, Mom, would you please tell me what it was like for you when I had polio? And she did. She told me how she and the nurse and Dr. Friedman watched me die. I had a pink little face, little pug nose, and I don't know how long she was in there, but they turned off the machine. I was declared dead. I was gone. And she says, I don't remember how long I sat there. I don't remember. I just remember the feeling I'm losing my little girl and what my mother was feeling. And then all of a sudden she heard a clunk coming from the iron lung. The room is silent. The machine had been shut off. Everything it was one of those infectious contained rooms, so there's nobody else in there. And clunk. And she walked over and she peered in one of those portholes. I was kicking the iron lung. I was back. Whoop, I'm back. Well, then quickly they ran back in again. They got the machine going again. Now, I'll never wear a turtleneck. I'll never wear wool. They still weren't sure I was going to survive. So they took steamed wool. Now, imagine wool steamed and wrap all of your limbs in it, how itchy, but you can't move. I was paralyzed. I couldn't move. It was torture, but they were trying to keep those muscles alive so that they would not become atrophied. They were hoping I just might live. Well, I did. Spunky little kid, I did. Well, it wasn't easy because polio had really affected my brain. I had to completely learn to walk all over. My brain had to be repatterned for every motion of every muscle, every word. I had speech therapy. I had the braces on my legs, learning to walk all over, talk all over. But eventually, I got up and went back to school. Now, I always felt guilty about that because why does Sandy Dual live and all the other 9 kids die? I'm nobody special, I thought. Let's go back to heaven because you're going to see how they come together, okay? It's a little bit of suspense, but you'll understand in just a moment. Okay. Now remember, we had the backstory. I was in heaven. I'm standing in that room with this entity that was, don't be afraid. Oh, right, don't be afraid. Well, I was very afraid. I'd always had a faith that God is a light entity. God is more than we can imagine. God is forgiving. All of these different things, and I thought, okay, well, he certainly is a light entity, and this person is extremely powerful. And I call him he because I heard a voice. It was a male voice, and the entity was very strong and very male. And I felt like I was standing in front of my big father or something like that. As I said, he was looking into my soul, and I thought, oh my gosh. But then I started to calm down, and I realized he's not angry with me. He's just looking. He wants to know who I am. He's looking through my whole, I think he saw my whole life. I didn't. People talk about it. I think he did. And I knew he knew every cell of me. He knew me. I felt safe. I felt comfortable. I felt loved and compassion from he and all the other energy in this room. I did not feel at all afraid. And I felt no judgment or no condemnation. And those words are very important to remember. No judgment, no condemnation. Now, he asked me this question. You were giving a second life. Remember, I died with polio. You were given a second life, Sandra. What of value have you done with that life? Remember, I felt guilty. I didn't share it with anybody because people think you're nuts. You don't want to talk about things, especially a child doesn't want to talk about anything that. I remember thinking and saying, I tried to be a good mother. I tried to be a good wife. I was a Methodist Sunday school teacher, but I was divorced. And I had 11-year-old twins, Eric and Katrina, and 7-year-old Bobby. Now I knew right then I could have stayed in heaven. I could have stayed, but that part of my love for my children was still with me so strong. I said, dear God, please let me go back. I, I know it would be better for my kids to have me and their father, not just their dad. I promise I will make a difference, but please, please let me go back. And I waited, zip, poof, I was back in my body. Oh, was I hurting. The pain was terrible after many blood transfusions because he wanted me to come back and all kinds of medical care. I did recover. Now, I was very surprised to have gone to heaven. We all think, are we going to get to heaven? Do good people go, bad people go, all of that. I knew Jesus was my savior. I also knew the 10 commandments, and I never expected God to let me go to heaven. And I never expected God to forgive me. Why? This is very painful to talk about, but something that God says I have to do. So please just bear with me a minute. 2 years before this surgery and this colorful NDE I told you about, I had committed a sin I thought would be totally unforgivable. And I was living with that in my mind for those 2 years. It is painful to speak about it, but I know to understand the story and the power of God, I need to share that with you and your audience. In 1977, I met and fell in love with a man named Carl. It was in my early 30s, right? I divorced my husband, Richard, so I could marry Carl. He was Mr. Charm. He was everything a woman would want in an ideal man. He was fun, charming, romantic. He made me feel beautiful when my marriage did not, my husband did not. He made me feel desired. He made me feel special. We went on adventures and vacations. I loved to dance. We did all those things I did not get to do with Richard. So I was sublimely happy with this man. I thought, oh, here, finally, I'm going to have my life with Carl. My kids are good kids. That's wonderful. We'll be fine. Well, it was Christmas Eve, and Carl was going to come down and spend it with my 3 kids and I. And that was good because we're going to be married on Valentine's Day. So I was kind of expecting that wedding ring, right? Because he said, well, I'm coming down something special to talk to you about our wedding plans. I was so happy because the day before I just found I was 3 months pregnant. So I was really excited about that. And he had 2 adult children that were adopted. He was 20 years older than I. So my parents and my whole family disowned me. But I loved this man so much and I believed him, and what a fool I was. Well, anyway, he came in and he gave his gifts to everyone. There was no ring in my package. It was a sweater, but I don't remember anymore. I don't care anymore. He said, let's go into the dining room. I need to talk to you about something. So I said, okay, well, maybe he's going to talk about the wedding. Maybe he couldn't afford a diamond ring. That's okay. I love him. It doesn't matter, right? He says, I like you. You like me? I said. I think I love you. You think you love me? Um, I can't handle having twins again, Sandy. We got to stop seeing each other. Now? Right now? Yes, he said. He got up and out the door he went. And there I sat. Can you imagine how I felt? My kids were in the other room. It was Christmas Eve. No way am I going to do this to them. So I went in, I gave them a kiss, and up they went. And I went into my room and I cried in washcloths and I sobbed into the pillows to try to be quiet because I didn't want my kids to hear what happened. I was so devastated. I have never felt this low, this dirty, this stupid in my entire life. Alone, totally alone, just my children and I. How am I going to take care of my three good, and they were good kids, a baby, hold a job, pay my bills alone? How am I going to do it? I had lost all respect for myself. Everything was just too much. And that night, I decided to end my life. And I had every intention of doing it. I couldn't stand the sight of myself. I could not stand the thought of myself living another minute. Stupid, stupid woman to do this to your children. Well, I took enough pills to kill me. And I woke up on Christmas morning. Oh, was I sick? Oh, I was very, very sick and in agony. And I miscarried that baby on Christmas morning. Nobody knew about it. My children knew mom didn't feel well. They had no idea what had happened. I was terribly sick, both physically and emotionally, but I did eventually recover. I began to grieve that baby the day it died, Christmas Day. I was so angry and I felt so badly that not only did I destroy myself, but an innocent baby. It wasn't, no. I never told anybody about this, the suicide or the baby, except Carl, until I went public for the first time, just before I met your brother. February of 2024 was when I gave my first in-person story. It had always been my secret, a dirty secret. I always felt guilty about it. Well, I wanted to stop for just a minute. I always thought I was finished with Carl, right? He's out of my life, right? Oh, no, no, no. He turned out to be a stalker, just what I needed in my life, right? I'm trying to get my life together. Well, up until 4 years, he was still messing with me. And he would pop up at work. I had to get an order of protection to keep him. I was in the mayor's office to keep him out of my office and that type of thing. Anyway, I was happily remarried to Mark Young, was walking down the sidewalk up to a local store to get some milk for the kids, and a car pulled up next to me. And out steps Carl. Now, he had no business being in my neighborhood at that hour of the evening. None. Get out of the car. I miss you. I love you. I want you in my life. What are you doing? I said, what are you doing? Get away from me. And on he went. No, I've had enough of this. No more. Okay, I said, okay, Carol, remember that Christmas when you walked out on me and I had something to tell you? That something was I was pregnant with your baby. Why didn't you tell me? You didn't want me, Carl. You walked out on me. And because of us, an innocent baby died. You're not worth it. Get away from me. I never want to see you again. Unfortunately, that was the end of Carl. Now, this very important fact, I've given you all kinds of different scenarios. They all come together. My near-death experience came 2 years after the suicide. So it's important to know that even though we sometimes get to that point, we are sometimes forgiven by God. And I couldn't have it, and I know that. Now, I was forgiven. God forgave me long before I finally forgave myself about the baby. But I started to deal with this. And I did the first presentation, and I realized I had to open up my heart and ask God, what does he want me to do? Now, before I get into the conclusion, I want to tell you about my NDE is not the only encounter of the holy encounter of the Holy Spirit. I think I've only heard of one other person, such as myself, that has had this experience. I want to share this one with you as well. Then we'll get into the final. Well, I was trying to make a difference in my life. And I also was trying to keep my promise to make a difference in what I'm going to do. Fortunately, I had psychological help, which is very important. I had the counseling I needed, and I went on retreats. Now, I like retreats because I can lose myself in them. I can be who I am. I didn't know who I was. Who was Sandy? I have no idea who Sandy is. I have no idea. Well, this is a very special one. It's interesting. It was Easter, and Easter's coming up. It was Easter weekend in 1980. There were 20 members of the same Methodist church going on retreat. Now, we were not the facilitators, we were the attendees, including our pastor. Now, this is very unusual that we did it this way. Usually we were the facilitators. Well, Sky Farm Retreat Center is in the mountains of New York, setting up on a hill, and it was raining, and I was busy getting my kids ready to go visit their dad because he's going to watch them on retreat. I forgot my rain things, but I had them all set off to go off to do that. Normally I drive, but I didn't. Very important thing, I did not drive. A personality did not drive. We got there, and we had a very nice. So I was so excited about being there with these friends because I had grown close to these 20 church members during my being single time. And we had a pleasant dinner, and then we walked in to the study room about 8 o'clock, and they handed out the tablets and the pencils and the list of questions we're supposed to journal about. Oh, and by the way, this is a silent retreat. We didn't know that. This is a surprise. I've never been in a silent retreat before. Okay. Husbands, most of them were husbands and wives. There are a few of us single, but no talking between husbands and wives. No talking between anybody until 8 o'clock tomorrow morning. Fine with me. I'm used to being by myself. I've been in counseling. I've been alone. My kids go off with their dad to visit. Fine, okay with me. So I thought, oh gosh, my friends were all going out to walk in the drizzly rain. Well, I don't want to get my hair all wet anyway. That's okay, fine. There was a big fireplace going over in the lounge room, and there was a big chair. I thought I'll just sit there and I'll take a look at. So I sat down in this big old comfy chair, and there's the fireplace going, and I started to look at the questions. I started to squirm, and I started to wring my hands. I go, oh dear, what is the matter with me? Why am I feeling this way? Oh. Now, when I get afraid or I get troubled, I'm a runner. I'll get away. I will avoid it. Couldn't go anywhere, could I? Well, I was so distressed that I was going to run home. I kid you not. I stood up and I threw those books right onto the floor. And there are double doors. I went right into the double doors, wonk right through the double doors. Go out. Can you imagine watching? Out into the rain, wonk. And as I'm running into the trees, there are all of my friends standing in the circle saying, oh, Sandy is really, what is the matter with her? I was out there, and oh my Lord, what am I doing? I can't run home. I live 50 miles away. What's going on? I remember I backed up against, I think, a stump or a tree. I remember something stopped me. I kind of stopped and put my hands up like this. And I said beseechingly, dear God, dear God, why am I here? Why on earth am I here? And I opened my eyes, and this is what I saw. I was immersed, surrounded, and shrouded by a soft, white light. I was not getting rained on. It felt like a big, fluffy white blanket, a hug. Oh, it felt so good. It felt like a hug. And then I heard this voice, that same voice. Don't be afraid. Well, I wasn't afraid this time. This is exactly where you are supposed to be. This is the beginning. There's all the people watching me smiling, and this is really surreal. Can't believe it's happening to me. So, okay, I went back into the room, had a shower, crawled into bed, went to sleep. Now, it had to have been a dream. There's no way this could have been real. I've never heard of anybody else ever doing this. I'm just Sandy. I'm nobody special. I'm just Sandy, right? Well, at 8 o'clock when we got together, I was barraged with, what happened? I didn't say a word. I said, what did you see? Clayton, the pastor, said, Sandy, there was a white column of light. You were in it. We saw it. You glowed. It was beautiful. I said, Shirley, Sam, Ruth, my friends, did you see it? Yes. Did you hear any words? No one heard the words. but they saw the light. They felt it. They saw the intensity of it. They just were, it was enrapturing for them as well. I just was so amazed by the whole thing. And the next morning was Easter Sunday at church. So Clayton said, Sandy, you have to share this story. Now, I've never spoken in front of anybody at that point, but I went up into the pulpit and I just said, this is what happened at Sky Farm. This is just this amazing thing that happened to me. I'm just an everyday, regular person that's had an absolutely incredible experience. So that was the beginning of my finding a direction of where I was going. So it was an excellent validation. How better a validation could I have than this white light and God saying, he didn't tell me how to get there, but I'm on the right path. Okay, now we have to figure out what it is, right? So more study groups, more reading, and counseling. Now, I still felt lost. I felt, I'm a visual person, so I have to put a face or a body to what I'm talking about. And I talked about that. I can't get this crap off of my back. This thing is controlling me. I'm trying to get my life better. I'm trying to get self-confidence. I'm trying to feel better about myself, but this thing, well, I'm rather creative, but there I am. There is my thing. It is a purple dragon. So you're going to have something mess with you. It's a purple dragon. And I couldn't reach that thing. I couldn't get it off my back. So I started to go to counseling. And I had two counselors that made some progress, but until I met Dr. Charles Menzel, I still had a long way to go. He was fascinating. He taught me how to reduce my pain, how to get self-confidence in myself, and to make a life worth living. And I realized I had the power to undo. My past can undo me, but I'm not going to let it anymore.